If you think I'm one existential crisis away from booking a flight to anywhere but here, you're correct. And that's why this film was made for me. Hi, I'm LadyJenevia, your resident demander of the rom-com revival, and today's video is a review of the new Netflix rom-com, A Tourist's Guide to Love. When I asked for a press screener for this, I didn't know anything about the project except a basic logline providing a general premise, the fact that it was a rom-com, and that it was starring Rachael Leigh Cook. Miss Cook has already earned her spot on my wall by being in the cinematic masterpiece Josie and the Pussycats, so I was ready to watch this. In some ways, it feels like this film was made as a way of Netflix apologizing to her by making a horrendous cash grab sequel that isn't a sequel, but yes, it is a sequel, or maybe it's not. Same last name, different first name, as she had in She's All That. And Netflix is making these amends by sending her to Vietnam for a beautiful holiday. And you know what? After watching this film, I want to go too. To be fair, I already wanted to go to Vietnam, but now I want to go double.
You see, for years, the government has been wisely coercing teenagers to buy products they normally wouldn't want just to get their money.
First up, the premise. Following an unforeseen end to a romantic relationship, Amanda, that's Rachael Leigh Cook's character, a travel industry professional, agrees to undertake a covert mission to gain insight into Vietnam's tourism sector. She arrives just in time for the Vietnamese Lunar New Year celebration, Tet, and soon embarks on a voyage of self-discovery and falls in love with her Vietnamese expatriate tour guide, Sin. They decide to hijack the tour bus to experience life and love in unconventional ways.
To me, why I think it's wonderful that this film was made is that so many people who would otherwise not get to travel to Vietnam now get to see so much of it through the eyes of our protagonists. That's where it's winning for me. If they didn't before, I want them to believe in love again. I can't help it. That's all I got.
Like many rom-coms, I would say that there is a certain formula. You know the general structure that the story is going to follow. Meet cute, rising attraction, one major conflict that will pull the couple apart before an inevitable reconciliation. No one from Netflix come yell at me for saying this ahead of the film's premiere, by the way. I know I had early access because of the press screener that you gave me. Thank you for that. But rom-com fans are not looking to rom-coms for some wildly subversive deviation from this very broad structure. We are here to see cute people fall in love, and we are here for good vibes. And this brings me to my first point, which is that I was very struck by the overall warmth of this film. When I was reflecting on the experience of watching it and on the journey that Amanda goes on, the best way I could create a point of comparison is to liken it to a hot bath. When Amanda goes to Vietnam, she is a fish out of water at first, as anyone is inclined to feel when traveling to a country they've never visited and have no real familiarity with beforehand. When you first get into a hot bath, it's hot and you feel a bit weird because it's this significant change in temperature. But once you're in there and you start to get settled in, you end up really enjoying it, and all that tension you've been carrying around in your body starts to dissipate. And that is exactly what happens to Amanda on this journey. Yes, it's a rom-com, and we're here to see pretty people fall in love, but there's this underlying sense of not necessarily self-actualization, but just a non-violent but still seismic shift in your life compass. I think that my affection for this film is definitely enhanced by the timing of its release. I myself am fresh off of watching and hyping up Mafia Mama in my video review of it, because that was another film that I was given early access to ahead of its release. And these films have this thematic overlap of traveling to another country and finding a newfound perspective on living your best life.
Part of Amanda's journey and what I think this movie represents in a bigger way, and I hope I do a good job of saying this, is that you can exist somewhere. You can be planted in a certain soil, and you can be existing, but maybe you're not thriving. So I would say, if I had to sort of like put a quote-worthy sentiment around that, I would say really check the soil where you're buried for nutrients. Really look at where you are. And maybe if you can, if you have the ability, step outside of that, see something new, grow yourself.
I didn't go into watching A Tourist's Guide to Love presuming that I would love it. I was hoping I would at least like it, because I don't find it pleasant when I ask for a press screener, get that press screener, and then don't enjoy the thing, but am still stuck having to review it. But needless to say, I had my reservations beforehand because this film is set in Vietnam. I did not want to go into this film and see or hear anything that would be degrading or insulting to Vietnam as a country, its culture, or its people. I myself am not Vietnamese, and I don't have the knowledge necessary to nitpick any details of the film's accuracy, but just in general, I am wary of Hollywood films where you have a North American traveling to Asia. I don't want to see some gross Todd Phillips film where the main characters are being disruptive and destructive tourists, not to mention downright bigoted. But Amanda goes to Vietnam, and she will at times take a backseat to our view of these beautiful shots of Vietnam, the different locations, the food, and she's never playing into that stereotypical tourist archetype that spends a bunch of money to go to another country, and then once you get there you're complaining that the place you're at is different from the place you came from. Amanda as a character has her own issues within herself that she needs to let go of, but it's never a character conflict that is used as a way for her to be disrespectful to Vietnam, with the story's narrative somehow excusing that. It's more so about her needing to learn to go with the flow more, embrace life and adventure and spontaneity, within reason. The movie is just as much about falling in love with Vietnam and life itself as it is about two attractive people falling in love with each other. One of the other things that I love about the film's premise and execution of that premise is that the film has this tourism element built into the story, and they make the most of that by having these characters go out and about in Vietnam. If we compare it to a different tourism rom-com on Netflix, Love in the Villa, the difference in quality of the visual impact is night and day. Love in the Villa had so much of its runtime with these two people stuck inside of a villa instead of going out and about in Italy. To be fair, maybe that film was impacted by a budget issue and also filming restrictions because of the pandemic. Nonetheless, whatever the reasons were, the overall look of that film came across as cheap and uninspired. It was just a rushed, shoot this character, shoot that character, cut back and forth between them over and over again, instead of trying to be more dynamic in your shots or even the lighting. But with A Tourist's Guide to Love, you can see Rachel and the other performers in the ensemble out in Vietnam, which from what I can see in this film is a beautiful backdrop to film a movie in. But of course, it's a rom-com, so let's talk about the romance. Despite the film only being about an hour and a half long, Amanda and Sin's love story still manages to feel like a slow burn. The attraction that they have doesn't have that almost mystical level of happening instantly that you see in a lot of rom-coms or romance films in general. If any of you saw the new erotic thriller series on Netflix, Obsession, which was so bad I binged it all in one go, just terrible people being terrible and having no chemistry with one another. It was so bad that I couldn't look away. But I bring that project up to make the point of comparison, where that show has William and Anna, two characters who get involved in a ridiculous affair even though William is married and Anna is dating William's son, Jail. Both of you write to jail. When William and Anna meet for the first time, they look at each other and we're supposed to believe that just by looking at each other, it is now on like Donkey Kong. And to that I say nay. Ugh. I at no point believed the attraction. They were just two people slamming their bodies up against each other because the actors were doing whatever was in the script, and not because I was somehow made to be convinced that these were two characters that were believable and capable of immersing me in the passion they were supposed to have for one another. No. In A Tourist's Guide to Love, Amanda and Sin are just two people meeting because of their circumstances. She is visiting Vietnam and he is a tour guide. But as they gradually get to know one another, they find that they start to like each other, they're getting along, and I found the whole sequence of events a lot more believable. Now, to be clear, I do not need every film I watch to be realistic. I am absolutely on board for hyper-stylized filmmaking and performances and narratives in general, if they are done well. But the more organic feeling of Amanda and Sin's romantic journey worked for me. Her being someone that's just gotten out of a relationship relationship and the circumstances of that breakup being very unpleasant, as well as her being hyper-focused on her job and the tasks she has at hand, the entire reason she's in Vietnam. It just makes sense for who this character is that she doesn't immediately get swept up in the first hot guy she meets when landing in Vietnam. If she was ready to throw herself into a fling right away, it simply wouldn't be true to who that character is. Conversely, Mafia Mama, yes, I'm bringing it up again. Toni Collette's character flies to Italy having already had a conversation with one of her best girlfriends before she left about how she wants to have the full experience in Italy, including but not limited to finding a good hookup. So it absolutely makes sense for Toni Collette's character to completely swoon at the first hot Italian man she meets while she's still at the airport in Italy. I am no stranger to advocating for more rom-coms and more romance being revived in fiction, be it on film or in television. I'm more willing to give rom-coms the benefit of the doubt nowadays as long as they're not propaganda. I'm looking at you, Ghosted. Because it's a genre that needs to be watered and nurtured back to life after being far too dormant for my liking. We had Crazy Rich Asians do very well at the box office, and I thought that that would kickstart a lot more rom-coms, but it's been a fair few years now, and the rom-com still feels like an untapped niche. Is it cheesy to see your hot Vietnamese tour guide emerge from water in slow motion without a top on? Yes. Did I start yelling, yo, at my screen when it was happening because it was scratching this nostalgic itch from being an impressionable young prepubescent seeing Colin Firth emerge from the lake in his white shirt, even though that most certainly was not in the book? Pretty much. I have a lot of complicated feelings about Netflix as a platform, particularly when it comes to their manner of conducting themselves in the production of television series. For better or worse, though, when it comes to films, it's usually a one-off. Some films may get sequels, but a lot of times it's a one-and-done contained story. And I personally would like for more rom-coms to get their due praise. Maybe if Netflix starts getting more hits in the rom-com or broader romance genre, the old school studios will hop back on board and start greenlighting more rom-coms to the cinema, because that's really where I want to see them the most. If anyone would like to do a cinematic re-release marathon of The Wedding Date, Kate and Leopold, and Austenland, even though those films have no connective tissue between them apart from being iconic rom-coms, you had better believe I will be there. In conclusion, stream A Tourist's Guide to Love, now available on Netflix. If you are Vietnamese and there are any cultural inaccuracies to what was shown in the film about Vietnam and its culture, you can let me know in the comments. I'm more than willing to read them. Let me know what rom-coms or romance fiction you want me to share more in-depth opinions on next, because I have a lot of praise and also scathing feedback to offer. Grease 1, inferior to Grease 2. Crazy Rich Asians, trash. The Wedding Date, still that girl. Everyone wishes they were on her level. And if any of you happen to have Meg Ryan's phone number, please call or text her and tell her that we need her to also return to the rom-com. If Rachael Leigh Cook, Miss She's All That, can return to serve us a feel-good rom-com following rom-com powerhouses like Jennifer Lopez, Julia Roberts, and Sandra Bullock, whomever in Hollywood is failing to get Meg Ryan to come back needs to be replaced. You are not doing your job. If you get Meg Ryan and Hugh Jackman specifically to come back together in a new rom-com, I will be an inconsolable puddle on the floor. Oh my God. I will be going out of town soon, but I'm going to try to do a new Bridgerton video before then. If I run out of time, then just stick around, because either way, Queen Charlotte will be coming out soon, and you know that's going to monopolize a fair bit of airtime here on my channel for a good while after its release. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.